Hello and welcome back to Like Maria. Today I've got 5 quotes that are said by Macbeth for you. After this you'll be able to talk about Macbeth just like Maria. Really early on in the play, when he's heard what the witches have to say, Macbeth says, "If chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir." It's very clear early on. We find out Macbeth's mindset. Here he's saying, well, I'll just let things happen. Without my stir, I won't move. That word stir means move to do anything. We can interpret it also as kind of mixing and moving things. And he's saying, no, I don't need to do that. And this is really when he starts off as an honourable man. He's a soldier. He's loyal to Duncan still. And he says, well, whatever happens will happen. And I think this is really important to illustrate Macbeth's state of mind at the early stages of the play. Now, subsequent to this, he listens to what Lady Macbeth has to say. And Lady Macbeth manages to persuade him by attacking his masculinity and talking about a variety of things, and manages to persuade Macbeth that really he needs to do something. He needs to stir, in other words. At the end of her diatribe, Macbeth turns to her and says, "Bring forth men, children only." And I think this is really indicative of his attitude here. He is saying, you have filled me with vile thoughts, with violent thoughts, and these are only fit for men. Now, of course, the stereotypical view of men and women, particularly in those times, was that it was only the males who should be violent. And Lady Macbeth, her reputation as being quite evil and manipulative, is quite unusual for a female of that time. So, bring forth men, children only. He thinks that these thoughts that she's expressed are only to be heard and carried out by men. So that's his attitude to violence, but it also demonstrates that he has changed his mind somewhat. Okay, next quote is Macbeth reflecting on the witches. He says, after the second time he's spoken to the witches, "Infected be the air whereon they ride, and damned all those that trust them." Now, this is a really interesting quote on 2 counts, and it illustrates Macbeth's opinion of the witches. Number 1, infected. He says that the air should be infected where they ride. He wishes harm on them, but also the implication is that the air is infected where they ride, that evil surrounds them like a disease. This is imagery of sickness, of illness. So it lets us know that actually Macbeth does know that the witches are not good. They are evil, manipulative, and they are the sorts of things that are associated with infection. The second part of this quote, "and damned all those that trust them," is really accusing himself. He's saying here, those people who trust the witches should be damned. And we know that Macbeth can't help himself. He has to trust the witches. He listens to what they say and he acts according to the things that they've predicted. Now, this doesn't really work out because he's misunderstood some of the predictions, particularly in relation to Macduff. But he here is saying that the people that follow what the witches say are associated with hell. They're going to be damned. They are bad too. So that's a really good one if you're looking at ideas about Macbeth and his relationship with the witches. The next quote is, after Lady Macbeth has died, the news is brought to Macbeth and he says, "Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow." And here he's really referring to the transitory nature of life. It's a little bit like a candle flame. It can be blown out. Life is a walking shadow. We are given some time to walk through this life, but in a very unsubstantial way, a very cursory, light, not heavy, present way. So he's reflecting here in this philosophical point about the cursory, transitory nature of life. And it's interesting that at this point in the play, perhaps Shakespeare wants us to listen to these words that Macbeth is saying and thinking that Macbeth is reflecting on his own life and how shortly he's likely to be dead. And also he gives him this philosophical moment to show perhaps there's a depth to his character that we haven't seen before. It's almost a little Hamlet-esque. Okay, last quote at the very end, when he is determined to challenge Macduff, he says, "I will not yield to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet." I think this is a really key one, showing Macbeth's attitude and the journey that he's come on. So here he's saying not only that he is going to be strong and he will not yield, he will not commit suicide, is what he's said a little bit earlier, like the honourable Romans used to. He will not throw his sword down and capitulate. He will go on till the last. But the interesting thing is that he really does not want to have to bend the knee to Malcolm, the young Malcolm. This is for him the driving force, that he covets the throne and the crown so much that to subjugate himself to another monarch would be out of the question. So I think that really taps in to his ambition and his sense of superiority and righteousness. But also, it really is evidence for the change that we have encountered in Macbeth. At the beginning of the play, he wasn't going to stir or do anything, but now he's certainly going to stir to prevent anyone else having the throne.